Biden confronts Saudi Crown Prince over Khashoggi homicide, expects movement on strength. Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. U.S. President Joe Biden said on Friday he told Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman he held him responsible for the homicide of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, rapidly after replacing a fist bump with the kingdom's de facto ruler. On a trip to reset relations with a rustic he had called a pariah after Khashoggi's killing in 2018, Biden stated the Crown Prince, called MBS, denied involvement in the homicide and mentioned he had held the ones responsible to account. With respect to the homicide of Khashoggi, I raised it on the pinnacle of the assembly, making it clear what I notion of it at the time and what I consider it now, Biden instructed reporters. I changed into straightforward and direct in discussing it. I made my view crystal clean. I said very straightforwardly, for an American president to be silent on a difficulty of human rights is inconsistent with who we are and who I am. U.S. intelligence says the Crown Prince accredited an operation to capture or kill Khashoggi, a Saudi insider turned critic, who changed into murdered and dismembered by Saudi dealers in the kingdom's consulate in Istanbul. Biden stated what occurred to Khashoggi was outrageous. He basically said that he was now not individually responsible for it, Biden said of the Crown Prince's response at some stage in their meeting. I indicated that I concept he was. The president stated additionally they discussed electricity and that he anticipated to look movement from Saudi Arabia, a main oil producer, on electricity in the coming weeks. As a presidential candidate, Biden had mentioned the Dominion should be made a pariah on the world stage due to Khashoggi's homicide. He stated on Friday he did no longer regret that comment. With the frame language being watched closely, at the start of Biden's Middle East journey officers had mentioned he could keep away from close contact, inclusive of shaking hands, as a precaution towards COVID-19. But the president ended up conducting handshaking all through the Israel leg of the excursion, too. Biden's interaction with the Crown Prince drew immediately grievance at domestic inclusive of from the Washington Post and the Committee to Protect Journalists. Khashoggi were living in self-imposed exile in Virginia. The late journalist's fiancé, Hatice Cengiz, published an image of the fist bump on Twitter NYSE, TWTR, and stated Khashoggi would have written, "Is this the responsibility you promised for my homicide? The blood of MBS's next victims is to your palms." Biden advised newshounds in Jeddah he was sorry she felt that way. U.S. journalists shouted questions on Khashoggi on the Crown Prince at the start of the assembly. Will you apologize to his circle of relatives? One known as out. MBS, with the Saudi electricity minister seated beside him, did not respond and appeared to smile slightly as the newshounds have been led from the room. Pressure over oil energy and security pastimes triggered Biden and his aides to decide now not to isolate the Gulf oil giant, which has been strengthening ties with Russia and China, despite the president's disgust over the killing. Biden desires to recalibrate Washington's members of the family with Saudi Arabia and now not rupture them, U.S. country-wide safety advisor Jake Sullivan stated. The Saudi ambassador to Washington, Rima bint Bandar al Saud, who turned into part of the Saudi greeting festivity, reiterated in an editorial for Politico the Dominion's abhorrence of the killing, describing it as a grotesque atrocity, and said it can't define U.S.-Saudi ties. Jeddah hosts a bigger amassing of Arab leaders on Saturday. Biden will talk energy protection with leaders of Gulf oil producers and hopes to peer more action through OPEC Plus to reinforce output, but there were not going to be any bilateral bulletins from the talks, Sullivan instructed reporters and direction to Jeddah. Biden indicated he predicted action soon. We had a great discussion on making sure international energy security and good enough oil supplies to help global economic boom, Biden mentioned. I'm doing all I can to increase the deliver for America of America, which I anticipate to take place. The Saudis' percentage that urgency and based on our discussions these days I expect we'll see in addition steps inside the coming weeks. Saudi Minister of Country for Foreign Affairs Adel al-Jubeir said there was no settlement made on oil and that Saudi and OPEC nations would make a selection based in the marketplace, not hysteria or politics. The OPEC Plus group that includes Russia meets next on August 3. The United States and Saudi Arabia have reiterated their commitment to the stability of world power markets, a joint announcement carried by means of the Saudi Nation Information Organization, SPA, stated. The U.S.